All right. So stardate 14035.196. This is the Part-Time Movie Guy podcast. I'm your host, Bin Lee. Today, my guests are Dorina Arellano and Pedro Arellano. Just like last time, it's been over a month, I guess, since the last time I potted. So it's like, took a little hiatus for a certain important tournament that happened. But of course, some quick disclaimers. This podcast is brought to you by Office Ninja, which is on iTunes. You can see the glare there. Dorina did the composing.
I did the music.
Yep.
It's really cheesy.
The kick-ass music.
Not the movie, but the music.
This podcast is uncensored, and our bad word of the day is ass fuck, which I think is clearly a euphemism for anal sex. I don't know why that's a euphemism at all. It's
a literal.
Yeah, it's very much in your face. Well, I guess in your
ass.
In your ass. There may be spoilers. For example, the spoiler of this episode is in 1953, Waiting for Godot, the play premiered. Here's a spoiler, Godot never shows up. Asshole. So today we are trying this podcast on Dorina's old computer because my computer is actually broken down and destroyed.
So sorry we're so dark. We probably look like vampires, and my computer's from like the 90s.
Yeah. So if it crashes halfway through, you know why. Yeah, apparently my video card fried.
Oh, that's not good.
Which is weird.
At least I look tan, though. That's like a first.
There you go. I look Filipino, I guess, or something. Yeah, so also what this means is right now this podcast will only be available on YouTube. I don't have access to my Final Cut Pro to turn it into an MP3. So those waiting for the MP3 will have to wait next week when hopefully my machine is back to normal. But, technology.
Indeed.
But let's go with some quick introductions for my guests. Pedro, why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Pedro. I'm Dorina's brother. I love soccer, and you guys invited me to talk about soccer on the podcast. Happy to be here. Go Chivas.
All right. So Chivas is in the Mexican League, not Chivas USA, right?
Right. Chivas in the Mexican League.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't talk about.
It's good to clear that up.
Right.
We don't talk about Chivas USA.
Are they actually affiliated with the Mexican Chivas franchise?
They used to be.
Okay.
So the Chivas in the Mexican League started Chivas USA in MLS, but the owner of at that time both teams just never really paid attention to the MLS franchise, and he's a pretty crappy owner to begin with. And he was even worse with Chivas USA. So they reached a deal not too long ago where MLS bought the team. So now it's not really affiliated with Chivas other than the name. And there's been talk about, are they going to relocate the team and change the name? But today, no, it's not affiliated with Chivas anymore.
Okay, wait, so you're saying the MLS owns the Chivas USA team, much like how, a couple years ago, the NBA actually owned the New Orleans Hornets at that time?
Correct.
Okay. So the owner was that bad, they just said, screw it, we're buying it from you.
Yeah. I mean, there was a discrimination lawsuit against him at one point. Didn't really spend on players, and the team was struggling really, really bad.
Huh. All right. Well, I guess that's more than enough MLS talk for this episode.
Agreed.
But good to know.
Hey, MLS is pretty cool. Support MLS.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a kind of a Galaxy fan, but anyway, Dorina, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Whoever's listening probably knows that I'm a huge nerd, both for really nerdy stuff like comic books and music, and in this case, sports as well. I'm very happy that Germany won. I'm wearing my jersey. Well, actually, it's my Con jersey. For those of you that don't know him, it's my favorite goalie of all time, Oliver Kahn, which is also pretty nerdy if you think about it. The rest.
Con!
Yes, it's not spelled the same. In fact, when I was at Google the other day, some nerd came up to me. He's like, "Oh, that's a Star Trek shirt." I'm like, "Nope, no, it's not."
Wrong Con.
But I'm also obviously a huge Mexico fan, as you can see my beautiful flag on my couch, and I don't care what people say. I think they did fantastic.
They did. They actually did.
All right, well, so why don't we just start off with that, with Mexico? I mean, obviously, I think for casual fans like me, actually, I think I watched all of the Mexican games, partly because, obviously, my friendship with you and with our friend Apollo.
Right.
But yeah, the Ochoa game was obviously fantastic. Ochoa against
yes.
Brazil.
I mean, Ochoa was fantastic the whole tournament. I mean, I think both him and Tim Howard were my favorite goalies of the whole tournament. Like, they were super impressive and amazing. And I think because of that Brazil game, Ochoa got like as famous as the coach, because I know, as you guys saw, Miguel Herrera, the coach, became a super popular GIF all around the world. And I think he was written about everywhere, like on Slate, the New York Times even, or I forget what other famous outlets. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm very happy with their performance. I'm really upset that they couldn't go any farther, because I think other World Cups in the past, they haven't done as good. But this time they did so good, even without FIFA's help, even with FIFA fucking with them the whole time. Because we got the worst calls, like the worst calls ever. We should have we technically beat Brazil in the group. They just didn't call. They disallowed 2 goals. We didn't get like a million penalties that we should have gotten. And obviously, Brazil, Neymar, I think, scored an offside goal and they let him have it. It just, yeah, it was very frustrating, and I'm okay now. But that first week after we got eliminated, I think I actually saw my brother that week, and we were both just so depressed because we could have gone much farther. And I think
it was pretty heartbreaking. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks now, so there's been time to digest it and recover. But I've watched hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of soccer in my lifetime, and I've watched the national team disappoint me many, many times, and I spent some time thinking about where this loss ranks, at least in my life as a fan, in terms of the most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking loss, and I think it's number 1.
Yep.
I think it's number 1 because it was really, for a number of reasons. One, if you just look at the game against the Netherlands, Mexico played just very well. They were not your typical, they didn't deliver the typical performance when a team with less talent tries to defend and stay very compact and try to sneak a goal or take it to penalties. They really took it to the Netherlands. They attacked. Gio scored a fantastic goal. And towards the end, they did pull back and they were defending, and you were hoping they could just last a little bit longer, 6 more minutes. But then Netherlands ties it up, and then at that point you're thinking, oh, that sucks. We're going to extra time. And you haven't even finished processing that thought yet, when they call the penalty kick and it's over. So the way in which they lost, where you went from thinking we are 6 minutes away from making history, because it would have been the first time Mexico reaches the quarterfinals outside of Mexico, because they've done it before when the World Cups were held in Mexico, and they were doing it against one of the best teams in the tournament. I mean, just you're 6 minutes away, and then you go from that to, oh crap, they tied, and then immediately go from that to it's over. It was just very, very hard to digest. But then what makes it even worse is they were coming from really solid performances in the group stage. Mm-hmm. I mean, they played very well against every single team, despite, as Dorina says, getting a lot of calls going against them. And you never want to blame the referees. Even in the Netherlands match, it was a bad call. That was not a penalty. Just to settle that once and for all. No era penal.
Yeah, no era penal. Yeah, somebody actually asked. That was one of the questions today.
It wasn't a penalty, but I don't want to blame it on the ref. I always think, don't put it in the ref's hands. Rafa Marquez made a bad play. He should not have done that play in the penalty box, especially if you know what Arjen Robben does. Right, but even when you say it's not the ref's fault, and you think, well, bad calls tend to kind of cancel themselves out or even themselves out over time. Mexico was particularly. It got some particular bad calls, like the two disallowed goals from Gio in the first game. There was a blatant penalty call against Croatia where the Croatian defender just kind of stuck his arms out, both arms.
Yeah.
And if those goals would have been called, and if that penalty call would have been made correctly, and then we would have scored the goal, Mexico would have actually finished ahead of Brazil in the group stage.
Yeah. Well, and then Brazil got obviously a ton of help, and I think it was the Brazil-Cameroon game, right, where Neymar, one of the goals he scored was totally offside, and they didn't disallow it.
But what hurts the most is, there's all that, and then on top of that, when you consider that had Mexico gotten past Netherlands, they would have faced Costa Rica in the quarterfinals, and you never want to underestimate any opponent. And there's no guarantee that you're going to win that game. And Costa Rica played a fantastic tournament. But Mexico knows Costa Rica very well. Just judging by the way they were playing, I think the likelihood that Mexico would have gone past Costa Rica was high. So that means that Mexico would have advanced to the semifinals. Like a CONCACAF team in the semifinals for the first time in history, Mexico being among the top 4 teams in the world. And just that opportunity slipping away in 6 minutes that's what makes it so painful. Oh, so painful. But
especially because they didn't give up. Like we're used to seeing a team that's very emotional, I think, yeah. in these types of tournaments. And yeah. Even when they had so much pressure, and even when they had so many calls against them, they still were playing so well. Like that's what makes it so sad. Yeah. Because they were very clean. It's just so frustrating. I'm getting angry again.
But all in all, you do have to recognize what Miguel Herrera did, the head coach.
Yeah.
He took a team that was just in shambles, that was a Grams Zuzi goal away from not even going to the World Cup. Nobody had any expectations about what they were going to do in the tournament. I thought they were just going to suck based on how they've been playing, and they played very well. So you got to hand it to Herrera for actually motivating the team, getting them to play together, just creating a lot of great chemistry, making the right moves, and then the guy just won the crowd over. He was a crowd favorite with his celebrations and his enthusiasm. So all in all, it was fun, and it's frustrating, but it was a good performance from Mexico.
Yeah, we're very sad, but we're very proud, and yeah. I wish the coach, what's it called? The Men in Blazers call him Mexican Hodor for those Game of Thrones fans.
Yeah, they were. They call him the Mexican.
Fantastic.
The Mexican Pete Rose, like Fat Pete Rose. That was another one. Just the memes and the gifs were awesome. And,
oh God, so good.
I think it would have been fun to see them play at least one more game. And but it's we got to wait 4 more years now.
Yeah, but well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I'm sad that he probably won't stay on as coach because of Mexican politics and in that sport. It's crappy because I think like you said, what he did in such little time. Imagine what he could do in 4 years from now.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure he's going to stay on as the coach, but judging from. Yeah, I think he's going to stay on at least to start the next 4-year cycle.
Okay.
The odds that he's going to stay the whole 4 years though are low.
Yeah.
Not because he's going to do a bad job. He might do a great job, but just judging from history, Mexican coaches rarely make it the full 4 years. There's always a lot of pressure from the clubs and the press, and things eventually go sour, and the coach is out. So I hope Herrera makes it to the next World Cup in Russia, but the odds are low.
No, I agree. I think the whole world wants to see him again. Yeah. Like, everybody fell in love with him.
Yeah, I mean,
hey, we'll always have his gifts.
Yeah, this is true.
I mean, yeah, the GIF of him turning
GIF.
It's GIF.
I don't care.
Hey, the creator said it's GIF. So, but the one where he turned Super Saiyan, I think, is one of my favorite things ever. But I think one of the hidden things about, I obviously don't know too much about tactics yet, but he does seem like less of an X's and O's type of manager and more of like just pure motivation. And obviously, I'm borrowing from other sports that I've seen, mainly from the NFL and basketball. But I'm also wondering if that kind of personality kind of can wear out a team, or the higher ups, where he's so passionate, like he rubs people the wrong way, especially over 4 years. And it could have been really ugly was, I think, the game where they were eliminated. Didn't he go on the pitch and in very unsportsmanlike, started calling out the referees and everything? Well,
I don't think he's the only coach that does that. I think a lot of coaches yell at the and in fact, actually, speaking of bad sportsmanship, I don't know if you guys saw Robin Van Persie, who I used to really, really like, actually pushed him away, and then he pushed him back, and he was all mad at him, and like this little short fat guy was like super mad. Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was really funny.
No, I think I missed that.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. Herrera, I think because he's so flamboyant, enthusiastic, I think people see him mainly as a great motivator. But he's actually tactically very smart. I mean, he comes from a you call it like coaching school of very smart tactical coaches. Ricardo Lavolpe, who has very different personality. He's kind of a douche.
Yep.
But actually Herrera learned under him, and he's actually a very good, very smart coach. You could see him throughout the tournament. Mexico tended to play second halves of the games better than the first half. Look at the game against Cameroon; they won it in the second half. Look at the game against Croatia; they won it in the second half. The game against the Netherlands, they scored in the second half. So he's actually very good at making adjustments and substitutions. But yeah, I mean, what you remember from Herrera is just his celebrations, and also he's, that's just the way he looks, just short, stocky, and pudgy. He looks more like a brawler than a smart guy, but he's actually a very smart coach. Yeah.
Okay. And I actually think I was reading some sports journalists and what they thought happened in that last game, and they actually praised him as a good coach, but they think he just got out coached at the end by Van Gaal. I don't know how you say the Netherlands coach's name, Louis Van Gaal. And
I guess I got to learn how to pronounce his name since I'm a Man United fan.
Right. So yeah, that's interesting because I'm a Man United fan.
Pronounce it Van Gaal. I don't know if that's the right way. I saw an interview with Herrera after the game, and I think what happened, and this is one guy's opinion, is just the team lost its composure. They asked Herrera about the substitutions that he made because he made this unusual substitution that he hadn't done in previous games. Not worth going into the details, but they asked him, you tried something in this game that you hadn't tried in previous games. Previous games, your substitutions worked. This game, it looked like it didn't. And he explained it very eloquently why he had done it. And when you hear him explain it, it makes a lot of sense why he made the substitutions that he did. He also said, what we tried to do was not to defend. You saw the team pull back and defend, but that wasn't because we went out and do it on purpose. The direction to the team was keep attacking. We've got these guys on their heels, keep attacking. But the team just maybe the moment was too big. They lost their composure. They lost their concentration. To the point where you had a veteran, 4-time World Cup captain Rafa Marquez, just completely lose his focus, and he makes that mistake in the box, and they call the penalty. So I think it was more mental, about more the moment got to them, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, because from my point of view, that's how I would perceive it. Was they played outstanding in the first 60 minutes, super aggressive, and then they got tight, or choking is probably too strong of a word, but basically it almost felt like they started what appeared to be they played not to lose, and
right.
That usually what happens to those types of teams. And it's interesting to hear Herrera said no, we never meant to do that, but then that's kind of how the team appeared to have played.
Yeah,
it's hard. I mean, nobody's perfect. It's hard to just be a perfect team for 90 minutes. I mean, you still can't. That last awful minutes, doesn't
right.
take away from the rest of the tournament and how good they did.
Well, look at the U.S. and the game against Portugal, right?
Yep.
The U.S. was also very, very close. Just talk about the U.S. a little bit. They talk about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Game against Portugal, just losing it in the last play of the game. At the end of the day, it didn't matter that much. Even if they had won that game, because they lost against Germany, they still would have qualified in second place out of that group. Right. But then you also have that game against Belgium, where they were just so close to stealing it. You had Wondolowski from the San Jose Earthquakes, who had a wide open net, and had he just tapped that ball in, the game would not have even gone to extra time. They would have won it in regular time. And
they would have gone to the quarterfinals, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? But again, it's that difference in the big moments, where maybe it's cliche, but the some teams can take advantage of them, other teams can't.
I mean, yeah. Speaking for just watching the American games, there's. All I can think about is the missed opportunities, obviously. As you watch the sport, it's more about getting quality opportunities, and sometimes it involves a little bit of luck. But, the Josie Altidore injury, I think, played a big part, because at least that's the excuse I would give to Michael Bradley's performance, because he obviously had the huge spotlight on him to be the kind of like the point guard of that team, and like I don't fault even that Ronaldo pass, they could have pressured Ronaldo a little bit better on the cross, or they could have defended better, but it started off with a Bradley turnover. It's one of those things where you watch how it all started. Had he been able to hold that ball for an extra 10 seconds, that play probably never happens.
You know what though?
Didn't they move Bradley's position though? Didn't your game?
They had to, because from what I've heard is because Josie got taken out, they basically made Clint Dempsey a striker, moving Dempsey up a little further.
Right.
And Bradley, instead of playing like Pirlo does for Italy, where he can lob these precision balls deep, he kind of has to play more of a Messi role, where he's kind of dribbling the ball a lot to create opportunities, and he turned the ball over a lot. He got progressively better, and it's not surprising because if you suddenly have to play this brand new role, especially in the middle of the game, Like I thought he played like total crap in the first game, and I thought he got progressively better, but still, it's it was a bummer to see like what they could have done because Howard played obviously great, and then you had some like really hopeful stuff with Julian Green and Yedlin, just causing chaos. Yedlin causing chaos was amazing to watch.
Yedlin was a revelation. That guy can play.
Yeah.
But you know what? I don't really blame Michael Bradley for that Portugal goal at the end. Even though he did lose the ball, if you watch that play again, there were 4 or 5 U.S. players tracking back to cover Varela. Like there were a lot of defenders there that could have prevented Varela from heading in the Ronaldo cross. So you can't really put the blame on Bradley as much as you can place it on the defenders that just lost Varela on that play. I mean, they were caught ball watching when you need to be looking at your guy and make sure that you stay on top of your guy. But again, I think that the U.S. also had a really good performance. I mean, before the tournament started, I think very few people had them getting out of that group. It was going to be Germany and Portugal or Germany and Ghana, and the U.S. was just. In fact, some people, experts even, had them not winning a single game, not getting a single point from the group. Like you have people like Alexi Lalas, who's allegedly an expert. He said they're not going to get out of the group, and you had serious people saying they're going to come back with 0 points. So getting out of that group, I think, is a really big accomplishment. And then holding Germany to a 1-0 victory when you saw how Germany eviscerated Brazil. In hindsight, that 1-0 loss against Germany doesn't look so bad now.
Right. Yeah. I mean. Yeah, it's as the days go by, the Belgium loss and the giving up that goal in the last 30 seconds of the Portugal game becomes more and more palatable. Just realizing the big picture that they not only they survived the group of death and frankly could have had a pretty good chance of actually winning that group. So I mean, just a quick flip around. I mean. So just realizing how badly Brazil got destroyed and actually how quickly they quit in the last 2 games, does that make that tie, the Mexico-Brazil game, that them tying it, does it make it less awesome?
No, because that was terrible refereeing that whole game.
Okay.
Like that was.
No, it's really because you can't really draw too many conclusions from in soccer from different games. So sometimes you say, Germany only beat the U.S. 1-0, but they beat Brazil 7-1. So the U.S. is 6 times better than Brazil. It doesn't really work that way.
Right.
I think something happened in that semifinal against Germany to Brazil, where yes, they didn't have Neymar, and yes, they didn't have Thiago Silva, which was probably the bigger loss out of the two because he's the captain, he's the central defender, he's the guy that organizes that defense. But I think that they just were the expectations just crushed them. I mean, think about this. This is a team that was expected to win the World Cup. Anything less than that would have been deemed a failure. So second place is not acceptable. You either win the World Cup not just because you're Brazil and not just because you're playing at home, but also because it's your responsibility to erase that memory from 64 years ago, the famous Maracanazo, when they lost against Uruguay in 1950. And also because your entire country is pissed off because you've just spent billions on a tournament when people want you to spend it on roads and services and schools and all that stuff. So all of that burden was on top of these guys, and I think that it was just too much. And maybe that's a stupid explanation that doesn't have anything to do with the actual game. But yes, Germany was a better team, far superior. but I don't think Germany is a 7-1 better team than Brazil. They were that day, but I don't think it works that way. I think that Brazil got as far as they could, maybe a little bit further, but it doesn't really diminish what they did in the group stage or the tie that Mexico got against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think that speaking of expectations, I mean, every single big or popular team was under a lot of pressure, let alone Brazil. But I think that, the fact that it was kind of like watching a professional team, Germany, play an amateur team. And I obviously everybody was super shocked, and I was entertained because yay, the internet and Twitter came up with like the best memes ever.
Yeah.
And I also, I'm used to rooting against Brazil, being a Mexico fan. But I actually,
it was incredible. It got to a point that game where I was watching the game like this.
Yeah, exactly.
I literally could not believe what was. It's no exaggeration to say I've never seen anything like that.
Agreed.
Yeah. You've seen teams get the beat down, but number one, a 7-1 scoreline is rare. Number two, when it's against Brazil, it's unheard of. And then it was at a World Cup and in their country.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that it was. If you watch that game, you witnessed history, and that game will be talked about in 50 years the same way that people talk about that Uruguay game in 1950. It was just unbelievable. And you know what? That's one of the many reasons why this World Cup was so much fun. I mean, I've been watching World Cup since 1986. That was the first World Cup that I actually remember when I became interested in soccer. And I can pretty confidently say that this is probably the most fun World Cup I've ever followed. There were so many surprises, so many great games in the group stage, a ton of goals scored. You had countries like Spain and Italy and England leaving in the first round, not even getting out of the group stage. You had countries like Costa Rica making it to the quarters. You had Luis Suarez trying to eat people. Obviously you had Brazil, the Brazil story. You had great goalkeepers. There was just so many great things, surprises and exciting things about this World Cup. It was fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been, from the World Cups that I remember, this has been the most fun I've had in just the group stage. Like I don't remember the group stage being that exciting and having me feel like I was watching like a semifinal. Like it was definitely different, and I think everybody was talking about it. And the other cool aspect of it is I saw, because of social media now, which we didn't have 4 years ago.
We did, but it wasn't
not to this point, right?
No.
Like not everybody was on Twitter, not everybody. Like especially journalists and well respected people or whatever. But the great thing was the whole U.S. like proper U.S. fans, and that makes me really happy.
Uh-oh, that made it sound like we've been...
It says, I think we're still live.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah,
it's still live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We got a Google warning that our connectivity was dying. So we'll see if the internet allows us to keep talking.
But that's a great point. One of the reasons that this was so much fun is because people, especially in the U.S., got so into it.
Yeah.
And the U.S. is not traditionally a soccer country, but I think the popularity of the sport has been steadily growing over time, and you saw these things happening in during the tournament, especially when the U.S. played. Bars were just filled a couple of hours before the game started. You saw these, massive crowds in cities like, Kansas City and Chicago and DC, in public parks and plazas, just getting together to watch the game outdoors. Those are things that you don't see in this country. You see in other countries, like in Argentina and Brazil and Mexico. You don't see those things happening in the U.S. And they happen. People got behind the team.
And it happened even for other teams, not just U.S. games,
right.
Which I thought was great.
And that that doesn't mean that all of a sudden all of those people are going to start watching MLS now. For the majority of them, it was a fun thing to do, and they'll stop paying attention, and then they'll start paying attention again in 4 years. But every 4 years, there's like a small number of people that become fans and will stick with it and will start watching soccer more. So it was a great testament to the growth of the sport in the U.S. So that was another great thing about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one other thing that also added to it is now we have apps, and we can, like the Watch ESPN and the Univision apps where you can stream them, helped a lot because I cannot confirm or deny that I might have brought my iPad to work and watched some of those games while working. But it was really, really funny. I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but the German-U.S. game, smack dab in the middle of workday, everybody at my workplace, almost everybody flooded to our cafeteria to watch. And the funny thing was they also said, oh yeah, our network is down. I don't know if it just was a coincidence or whether that many people in that area was streaming it that brought it down. I have no idea. But it was just really, really fascinating to see all of us in that room, just watching what was happening in that game. I think, yeah, it's partly like a generational thing. Like, I'm a recent convert. It's only been my 5th year watching this sport.
Right.
And so I think also, you got younger kids who are just playing this sport more and more often because they're getting scared away from, American football, especially with the concussion thing. So actually, there were a couple of things. One thing I want to touch on, and actually I also want to touch on the concussion
I was going to say, speaking of concussions.
Yes. So, but before we get to that, you guys talked about how great the group stage was. I was wondering, my point of view, it felt like, I don't know if it was maybe fatigue or something, but was it me, or was the quality of play so great in the first 2 rounds that it felt like the quality of play was slightly not as good or did not meet the expectations in the later rounds? Like, partly my fault because I wasn't watching the final, like, fully attention. I was hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
But also, like, you had the inexplicable 7-1 game, and then I don't know if any of the quarterfinal games were that memorable.
No, from the quarterfinals on, other than the Germany-Brazil game, there were a lot of slow-scoring games, more cagier matches. I think that's to be expected. You see that happen in the later rounds as teams have way more to lose. So yeah, you're not alone. I noticed that too.
Okay, and I'm wondering if it's also because you had obviously a few key injuries, but also you had more players getting those yellow cards, getting eliminated, or being suspended. I wonder if it's that, maybe also mental and physical fatigue. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything.
Okay.
I think it's and like my brother said too, it's there's much more at stake, so people are more emotional and they start making more mistakes and they're not as focused. It's a lot of pressure. It's only every 4 years. This is what I keep telling people.
Right.
Like there's a reason why people expected Cristiano Ronaldo to save Portugal, and he scored like 10 field goals.
Right. Well, also the same pressure on Lionel Messi. I mean, that was free kick that he had,
yeah.
And it freaking sails 10 feet over the net, that you would not expect him to do even with a blindfold on.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the questions we got today, which is more of a joke. It says, "Why does God hate Lionel Messi?" And
well, the answer to that one is easy. and that's because Maradona is God.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been so interesting had Argentina won. Like, would Messi have surpassed Maradona in Argentina? I have no idea. Probably.
Well, yeah, it's such a complicated issue. Just when you think about it, it would have been too good for real life had Messi scored on that free kick at the end of the game. I think the internet would have exploded. The city of Buenos Aires would have just been destroyed. It would have been way too much for real life. Those are things that just are not supposed to happen in real life, and it didn't. But I don't think I think that using that to say Messi didn't have a good tournament is couldn't be further from the truth. The guy had a great tournament.
Agreed. I will cut anybody that shits on him. I will cut you.
I think I'm in the minority. I think when I say that giving him the trophy of Tournament of the Player was well deserved. I think most people are thinking that it wasn't well deserved. I actually do think it was well deserved. The guy almost single-handedly got Argentina out of the group stage. Nobody.
And to the final.
There's a statistic out there that no other player created more chances for his team than Lionel Messi. I mean, talk about a team that depends on one player.
Especially once Maria went down, I thought that was a big problem with Argentina.
Yeah.
But without Di Maria just streaking down, he basically stretched the defense with him.
Yeah. But it's tough. I mean, the relationship with Messi is really tough because, as far as Argentina is concerned, because Maradona came from the Argentine soccer system. He grew up in Argentina. He played in Argentina. Messi never did. So Messi moved to Spain when he was 11. He actually, as a matter of fact, Messi could have chosen to play with Spain. And if he had, he would have a World Cup trophy now. But he chose to play with Argentina. But a lot of people in Argentina don't see him with the same attachment that they see Maradona because he never really played there. He moved to Spain.
Less of a hometown hero type of aspect.
Right. And yet, he's a fantastic player who I think had a really strong tournament. But even if he had won the World Cup, I think the debate of Messi versus Maradona, which is frankly kind of annoying now, would have still continued. It would have still continued, even though Messi has done immensely more at a club level than Maradona ever did, and he hasn't needed artificial substances to do it.
Well, I also I'm not just annoyed at him being compared to Maradona, but that whole him winning the Golden Ball was so like people were so annoying and such dicks about it because they were saying no, like James Rodriguez or James Rodriguez or whatever, or Arjen Robben, which I was like, I will punch you in the face. Like it's to me, a good soccer player is not somebody that's just flashy and does like really cool looking tricks that impress people that just watch the replays.
Right.
A good soccer player is efficient and humble and doesn't yell at the ref and doesn't dive. And he encompasses all of those things. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate that just because people don't only saw like one of his cool looking flashy replays, they think he didn't do anything. Like if you really saw that whole final game, of course he made mistakes, he's not perfect, but he tried to make a lot of fantastic genius plays, and it just they didn't come to realization because he didn't have any help. He didn't have anybody there to actually complete a pass, or he can't do it all by himself. And I think that speaks a lot about a player doing so much by himself. He obviously deserves that trophy. And I mean, James Rodriguez got the Golden Boot. Like other players still got what they deserved. I
There,
think,
there were some,
except for
there were
Luis
some,
Suarez, I think
there
he
were
should have
some
gotten
great performances.
fair play of the tournament.
There were some great performances throughout the World Cup. I would not have disagreed if they'd given the MVP trophy to James or Emmanuel Neuer, who was like an extra defender for Germany, or
Right.
even Robin, even though he's the devil incarnate. I would not have disagreed with any of those choices. But I also think Messi was very deserving. So you might have a different opinion, and maybe you have somebody who you prefer. But saying Messi didn't deserve it and he didn't have a good tournament is just completely ridiculous.
But it was like 80% of people, not just people like voting on polls, but actual sports journalists saying that he didn't deserve it. I mean, Maradona said he didn't deserve it, but that's because it's Maradona. But a ton of, I think Ian Dark, like big names like that were like, no, not player of the tournament. I'm like, why do you even have to say that? Like you're basically, I feel like now journalism has become to the point where it's like, I'm just going to say something controversial or shit on this really fantastic player, possibly the greatest, one of the greatest players we've had in a while, if not the greatest. And I'm just going to shit on him so people think I sound smart. I feel like that's all it is.
You got to get clicks. It's all about the clicks.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I mean, personally, I have no problem with Messi. I probably did not watch enough Argentina games to really get a great feel. Mm-hmm. And it's still one of those things where you're still learning, for me, I'm still learning, like, the nuances of players. Like, oftentimes I'm already, like, watching off the ball to see, like, who's clicking in terms of, like that's how I really noticed, like, the Costa Rica, their offside traps were amazing against the Netherlands, mm-hmm. like, how much they frustrated them. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I wish I saw Messi a little bit more just to appreciate his game. I mean, I'm still going to watch all the Champions League games.
The Barcelona games.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess I mean one player we didn't really talk about was James Rodriguez, and he had a giant grasshopper apparently on his shoulder.
That's right.
It was so bizarre. I didn't even hear about it until like an hour later. I was just checking Twitter, and they were making Mothra jokes and this and that. I mean, I would have to go like, would he be like the biggest surprise? Like, if you chose like biggest surprise of the World Cup, would it be him?
I think to people that didn't know who he is, I mean, he's definitely a revelation because he's amazing. He's a super young, super talented kid, and I think he's going to be even better the next World Cup. He was super fun to watch, and I was sad when Colombia lost because he was one of my favorites to watch for sure.
Yeah,
he was a
revelation to me. Really were like my favorite teams, my favorite non-U.S. teams to watch.
Yeah, and Mexico.
And Mexico, of course. That's by default. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Colombia was great. That goal that James scored against Uruguay was just fantastic. Like I said, there were a lot of goals, but there were also some great goals. You had the Van Persie goal in their game against Spain.
The one where he did like a dolphin.
You had the Tim Cahill goal that he scored against the Netherlands.
Right.
That was just amazing. So yeah, a lot of good performances. And James Rodriguez was, for me, a revelation. I mean, I'm not somebody that knew of him before the tournament. But that guy can play.
So was there like what was your biggest surprise for you? Was there one?
I mean, I'm trying to think of non-Mexico things, but one of them has to be the fact that Mexico was beating the Netherlands for 80 minutes. I did not expect that.
Right.
And even though it ended terribly, it made me feel really proud of them and excited to see what's going to happen in 4 years. And then also, obviously, Germany destroying Brazil. I really wanted them to destroy them, but this is the first time in my life I've ever felt bad for Brazil. I mean, it lasted like 5 minutes because then the fantastic had Brazilians. I did not expect that at all, and I'm really happy for Germany because one of my favorite players of all time is Miroslav Klose, and this was his last, tournament, and he went off in the style that Zidane should have gone. or retired, which he did not do that. So I was very happy for him. Like, it was really cool. I guess more than surprise, it was one of my favorite things in the tournament was when he got substituted for Götze, who scored the game and won the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he said that he was telling him, like, when they were substituting them, he's like, you know, you're going to be the one to do this. Like, you're the one that can win this for us. And so I thought it's like kind of like passing down the torch, you know, like, it was. I thought that was really cool.
All right, cool. All right, so we're.
Well, I want to know what he says.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
My biggest surprise. There's so many to choose from. You had traditional European quote unquote powers going out in the first round. Spain just embarrassed, completely humiliated. You had Italy going out. You had England going out. Just to prolong that country's suffering. You had CONCACAF teams doing really well.
Yeah.
Mexico, the U.S., Costa Rica. I mean, if you think that people didn't expect the U.S. to make it out of that group, I mean, forget about Costa Rica. I mean, Costa Rica wasn't even in the conversation. They were with England and Uruguay and Italy. They were not part of that conversation. And not only did they get out of the group, they won the group. It was just crazy. Then you had all that. You had Rihanna apparently is a really big soccer fan. That was a big surprise.
No, she's a bandwagon fan. Did you see her tweets? No, oh my God. It was, I don't know if she was joking and just trolling around, but she kept switching teams like, yeah, Netherlands. And then they got eliminated. And then she was like, yay, Argentina. And then when Germany won, he's like, I'm so proud of my boys. And she's taking pictures with them. I was like, what the fuck are you doing, bitch? And I actually like her. Like, I think she's gorgeous and good for her for being naked and not caring. But she did piss me off when she was happy that Ronaldo scored against the U.S.
But the biggest surprise, undoubtedly, was the Brazil-Germany game.
Yeah.
Only because that game left me speechless. I was not able to process what I was watching. It was unbelievable. So that was, for me, the biggest surprise of the tournament.
Didn't the Men in Blazers do a funny joke on Twitter where they were like, "Are these replays or actual Germany goals?" Because nobody believed it.
No, there was one that I thought was really funny. It said, "By the time you get this tweet, you read this tweet, it'll be 6-0."
Yeah. So one quick funny thing about that game was one of our coworkers would make ridiculous predictions in every game, and he, out of fun, he said that game will go 9-2. He didn't say in which direction, and he was actually kind of right. Yeah. So sadly, we are running out of time. Do we want to go with and talk about like our favorite whatevers of the tournament, or do we want to go serious and talk about the concussion issues that have arisen from this? From this tournament.
Well, we didn't get a question, but it was more of a comment that said, John Oliver's analysis still valid today. Absolutely love the World Cup, but I could do without FIFA.
Yeah, we got
which I think everybody agrees, and I think my brother tweeted this, which was awesome. That a ton of people and fans were booing Sepp Blatter when he was at the final.
Right. Booing your commissioner has been is a more and more common thing, I guess. I don't know. Well, at least.
But he deserves it, though.
Yeah. I don't know how he got reelected other than bribery, but So which one do you guys want to talk about?
Pedro?
Up to you guys.
I mean, we can talk a little bit of both. I think that the concussion issue, everybody was really pissed off. Because it's ridiculous. Like when you guys saw Mascherano like just completely losing it and like not being there for like a few seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was ridiculous. The fact that he came in right away.
What I found interesting about the concussions, and maybe this is my own perception because of the people that I follow on Twitter, is people in Latin America didn't seem too concerned about it or noticed it, whereas people in the U.S. Where there's probably much more attention to that issue, particularly because of the NFL. especially in recent years, the issue of concussions has gotten so much attention because of the NFL. I think it's more at the front of people's minds. Whereas I follow Latin journalists on Twitter, in Mexico and in South America, and there was no mention of it. So what was very interesting to me was just that difference between in the importance given to that issue in the United States, and it is very important. It is a life-threatening issue, but clearly FIFA is behind the curve in that matter.
I mean, FIFA is behind the curve on many things, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that sense. I think also it's an exposure type of thing, because not that I paid that much attention to the South American journalists or any of the other non-U.S. journalists, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these the whole macho mentality, the whole playing injured mentality. I mean, all that you could see that in a lot of sports, and obviously because the NFL is one of the forefronts in this issue in America, like a lot of the same things they're saying, I've seen that already 10 years ago. Like the denial, I've seen that 10 years ago. I read an interesting article from Bill Barnwell on Grantland asking about, well, how would we deal with this situation, other than having independent doctors there doing those tests. It does take a few minutes to at least quickly diagnose if it is a real serious concussion or not. How do you balance the player safety with how the nature of the game is, where it's free flowing, you just keep playing, you can add stoppage time, but it can get a real what if there were 2 concussion tests in one half? Suddenly now you're adding plus 10 maybe in stoppage time. It's so, I mean, obviously I don't know what the answer is, but it's definitely an interesting thing to think about, because I think that's one of the great things about the game is it just keeps playing, and you play to your 45 plus a little bit, but there's no time stoppage. I really like that.
Yeah, it's a very fluid game, and I think smart people can find a way to protect the player's safety and well-being without affecting the game too much. But it's a conversation that needs to happen. They need to start thinking about solutions. They shouldn't just end the issue because, oh no, it's it's going to affect the game, so let's not think about the player's safety.
Another thing about the game in general, we have goal line technology now, so they were talking about having offside technology, which I think is really necessary after what happened this tournament. So hopefully that happens next time.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, yeah, but yeah. So I mean, I'm glad that at least some medias are at least trying to raise the flag, so to speak, on concussions, and hopefully the awareness spreads to the other leagues, it spreads to the international, so maybe 4 years from now we'll be in a better position to address it, when it happens.
Hopefully 4 years from now there'll be less corruption in general. We'll see.
Yeah, that's wishful thinking right there.
Yeah.
We're still talking about...
I didn't even know, did you guys see the commercial, the main commercial when you're streaming on ESPN, and something about FIFA announcing that they really care about fair play or some crap?
Yeah, they were addressing
game manipulation.
Yeah.
Right, and I was like, what?
The good thing is that it's going to be played in a country where there's no corruption like Russia.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. It'll be perfectly fine.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't even talk about was it Cameroon that had match fixing controversies? But all right, so I just thought of so some quick thoughts here, I guess. Our favorite whatever. So we already kind of talked about our favorite surprise. Our favorite memes, I guess for me, it would be Super Saiyan Herrera.
Even though that one wasn't from the World Cup, though, right?
No, it was during the Brazil game. It was raining. It was pouring.
Oh, really? I thought they did.
Actually, that
slow motion, and then they added on.
I thought that was from an old America game.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's when America won the championship. That's an
Oh,
old.
okay, my bad.
Yeah, that's an old one. Yeah, no, but you know what? But I'm right there with you. My favorite one was Herrera. There was so many of them, but one in particular where they just scored a goal, and it takes him about a second before he just explodes, and it almost looks like he's trying to hold it in, and then it's too much, and he's like,
Wow,
that was
that was Oscar worthy right there.
that was my favorite one.
That was really good. Well, and then they did a Vine video of that with a song "Turn Down for What" actually,
Nice.
which I need to show you.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that yet.
My favorite actually has to be him. What the Croatia game? I think the second goal where he just loses it and like falls to the ground and then stands up and like Ochoa jumps on him. Like oh my God.
Yeah.
Mexican Hodor, man. So good. And then obviously there's also the Robin diving meme, which I guess now there's a piñata of him, right?
Really?
Yeah, of like him like doing like his like diving
dive?
performance.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
All right. Yeah. So favorite meme, favorite manager. I think. Although shout out to the Chile manager, looking like a cross between Pitbull and Andre Agassi.
Well, and then we got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, right, from Croatia.
Yeah. Old Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Totally older,
That was awesome.
much more attractive.
The Croatian coach, and then for those a little bit older, the Argentina coach looked like Biff from Back to the Future.
Yes.
Oh my
Older
God,
Biff.
that's so true.
I was calling him John Lithgow, but the Biff is way better.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like perfect.
Wow, that's so perfect. That's so funny. And shout out to Jurgen Klinsmann too, by the way. I love him. He was so happy about Germany.
All right, so our favorite player.
That's really hard.
How about favorite non-Mexico / US player?
So no Mexico, no U.S. Can we say both though? Like we should have our both. Like,
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I love Messi. I don't care what people say. I love him. But since this is I guess I want to say the Germany team because I like them all. But Schweinsteiger actually got his ass kicked the last tournament, and there was actually memes of him like wrapped up in like gauze. But he actually was really cool at the end of each game. I don't know if you guys noticed, but each team that got eliminated, he went and hugged like one or two of the players, and like he was like really, really cool about it. And I really appreciate good sportsmanship. So I thought that was cool. Other than the fact that he's a great player. I thought that was really cool.
Right. Pedro?
So I can't pick a Mexico or a U.S. player. There's a few. Obviously Messi, and because of the story. Also, I don't root for this guy, but Luis Suarez, just because he's such a great villain, and I think you always need a villain.
And now he's going to Barcelona, right?
Yeah, he is.
Jesus.
I don't even understand how that works, but.
Also, you know what? I think I'm going to go with David Luiz with Brazil. The guy won me over after they lost the game against Germany, and the guy was just bawling. He was in tears, and he was saying, all we wanted to do was give Brazilian people a smile. We just wanted to make the Brazilian people happy. And when you think about everything that was going on in the country, what he said has a lot of meaning. So yeah, the guy just won me over.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I felt really bad for him when he was crying.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's similar. Like the villainy part is compelling. Like, yeah, Luis Suarez, the 2 games that he was like a monster, but
almost literally.
Yeah. Like, I have
Hannibal Lecter.
Not that I like him anymore, but I have way more respect for Iron Robin because he was so like even in the games where like the Netherlands team was being frustrated in the Costa Rica game, I think, and I forgot where else. I mean,
he kept going.
Yeah. And like he was playing at such a top level. Like he was just a freak, just streaking down and just carving up those defenses.
Yeah.
And like I hate it when he goes left all the time. Like there's that one play, I forgot which game, but he's already on the left side of the pitch, and he freaking runs out of real estate because he's going left. I mean, there's I thought like the Netherlands was so balanced and everything. Oh, so I really like Neuer as well because he's just insane for constantly flying out like that. Like I forgot because in hockey there's one player who's super aggressive as a goalie, like constantly going for those balls.
Other than Quick?
It might be Quick. I've totally forgotten. But yeah, it kind of Neuer kind of reminded me of that play, except like 10 times more insane.
Right.
Yeah.
So I probably have.
So is he your favorite goalie of the tournament? I guess.
Neuer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like.
That's hard.
The CONCACAF goalies were all amazing. Ochoa, Howard, and then
Keylor Navas
in Costa Rica. Yeah.
I mean,
fantastic.
All of them were fantastic. I like seriously. Shout out to CONCACAF for like having 3 of the best goalkeepers in that tournament.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, having Neuer, and it was really frustrating because I know for a while Man United was going to sign Neuer. Instead, they went with De Gea, and De Gea is actually not that bad. But like.
Well, did you actually also hear that they were? I guess when Moyes was manager, he was he was trying to get Kroos from Germany.
Oh, really?
The amazing midfielder.
Uh-huh.
And I guess when Van Gaal took over, he like terminated that deal, and now he's going to Real Madrid. I was like, God damn it!
Yeah. How about our favorite play? Is there a favorite play? I mean, for me, I guess it's aside from the U.S. stuff, obviously. Being a Man United fan, the Van Persie Dolphin header.
That was pretty cool.
You know what?
Honestly, for me, it was the Marquez goal, just on a personal level, because
the Marquez goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was like it's what he does best when he scores. Like it was like a typical Marquez goal, and it was what made everyone so happy because it's like, here we are, we're back, we're going to do this. Like, it just meant so much to I think, Mexican fans in general. And right after that, Chicharito scored. Like, I was so happy for the team right then in those, like, 10, 20 minutes that, for those 2 plays.
Just to not be obvious, I'm not going to go with, because I could go with Gio's goal against the Netherlands. That was a fantastic goal. It was similar to James Rodriguez's goal against Uruguay, where he trapped it with his chest and then he brought it down and I think he left-footed into the goal. That was just a fantastic goal.
It was like Jermaine Jones, where you did not expect it to go in at all.
That one I have no idea how he came up with that.
The John Brooks goal against Ghana for what it meant, and then the guy's reaction, he just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And you had so many Messi goals. Just the goal against Iran, last minute of play, just great. Obviously, the Mario Götze goal in the final game, that goal by Götze was just fantastic.
Yeah.
But as far as plays, it wasn't it wasn't one that led to a goal, and it wasn't one that led to anything fruitful really. And Dorina's going to hate me for this, but in the Portugal-U.S. game, towards the beginning, there was one play where Cristiano Ronaldo was running down the left, and there were, I think, 2 or 3 U.S. players on top of him, and he just schooled them. He made them look like little kids. I mean, he did his fancy footwork.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he was probably showing off, but what he did in that moment was just unbelievable.
I mean, that's pretty much Ronaldo at his best, right?
Yeah. I mean, he was showing up because he can.
Yeah,
he was showing up because that's what he does. That's what he's good at. But I think I saw that from other players. I mean, I saw that from Robin as well. He took out like 3 guys. I saw that from Messi several times.
Yeah,
it's just that Ronaldo makes it look really, really pretty, and like he's like floating or something.
Right.
So it's like if you put like a bag over his head, it looks really pretty.
Yeah.
Was there a favorite crowd shot? Here's a difficult one, I guess. I mean.
Oh, so many.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd go with the Netherlands pilot.
I'm gonna pick two.
Okay.
One was in the Brazil-Germany game.
Yes.
They did show a lot of fans crying, but my favorite one was this girl. She wasn't crying; she was just stunned.
Yeah,
It was like
exactly.
she was looking back towards her boyfriend or her friend,
Uh-huh.
and her face was just like, what is happening? She wasn't mad, she wasn't angry, she wasn't crying, she was just
Shock.
stunned. She could not believe what that was awesome. And then the other one, this wasn't a crowd shot. This was the little kids that come out with the players.
Oh,
And
right.
I don't know if you noticed in the
The
third
little
playing
girl.
game, Brazil against the Netherlands, there were two little Brazilian girls that were singing their hearts out when they were singing the national anthem. This little cute big girl with the big cheeks, like, just singing the national anthem was really cool. That was a favorite of mine.
I'm actually going with a couple. I guess a good one and a bad one. That there was that one really sad Uruguay guy with like the flag painted on
Yeah.
his face
Yeah.
and the big afro wig, and he was so upset. He wasn't crying. He was just like he looked so disappointed and
Yeah.
depressed, but he looked so funny because he looked so ridiculous. And those are my favorite like sad crowd shots when like they're wearing like the most ridiculous outfits and they're just crying. But on the happy end, do you guys remember that? I think it was when the U.S. Scored against Ghana, and there was this one like slow-mo shot of this guy like with the American flag on his face, painted, and he's just like, he's just so happy,
Yeah.
and I felt like he kind of described everybody in the U.S. at that moment. It's so good. Yeah, that's another huge part of why this tournament is so fun is the fans and I mean the Mexican outfits were so funny too.
Yeah.
Like all the masks and like that one guy that dressed like the Mexican eagle. I mean that was basically nerd cosplay. That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love the Netherlands pilot guy. I don't know why he was in a pilot suit, but just bright orange, fantastic.
Right.
And then one of the sad fun parts was like in the Argentina final, they showed like this fat kid who was all sad like this, and his dad tried to console
Oh
him,
yeah.
and he was like, "Leave me the fuck alone."
Yeah, no, I remember that. He's just like, let me feel my feelings. It
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, crowd shots are fun. They're a fun part of the tournament, no doubt.
All right, so those are my list of faves, I guess, that I quickly thought of
That's
in the
late.
last minute. Yeah, it's getting really late. Any last final thoughts?
I wanted to be the next one already. It was heartbreaking and it was super fun, and I'm mostly just really proud of both the U.S. and Mexico. They did really well, and I just want it to be Russia 2018 tomorrow, because that's a month that really flies by.
Yeah.
It's super stressful, but it really went by fast.
Yeah.
Well, only 1,400 and some odd days until Russia. The World Cup is always so much fun, but this one in particular will be memorable. It's going to be Russia 2018 is going to have some big proverbial shoes to fill. It was a very enjoyable tournament. It flew by. And you kind of have this World Cup withdrawal the next 2 days after the tournament ends. It's like, what am I supposed to do now? Yeah, I can't wait until the next one. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, this is only my second World Cup, but I thought the level of play was way better. Obviously, my understanding was way better. The coverage was much better.
Yeah. Yeah, ESPN did a really good job.
Yeah.
They're not doing it next time, right?
No, it's going to be fun.
Yeah,
They're
that'll
not.
be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they've been training Gus Johnson on all of the Fox Champions League games. They're trying to make him like their main guy. I think because the level play was way better, it felt way better than 4 years ago. And now I know a lot more of the players. As an American, it sounds biased, of course, but now that Julian Green goal like with 15 minutes to go or 5 minutes ago, I can't remember, just suddenly like gave this giant push of hope. Like I've never, like it's rare because all the sports teams I follow are usually the big teams, so it's very easy for them to buy big players or whatnot. But that goal, like that was like the essence of hope right there. The next 4 years, like I just hope that, I have that hope just going there because, that's the new generation. Yedlin just causing chaos. And I'll be very curious to see how the time difference will matter in terms of who's watching. Because this will be even earlier than South Africa, I would think.
Well, I saw the France one, and it was still, it wasn't that bad. But yeah, this one was obviously the much nice, the better one for us.
All right, cool. Well, tune in next week. I will be changing formats, and I might have a regular co-host. My friend Vanessa might be my co-host. We'll see how that works. And hopefully by then I'll have a working computer instead of borrowing people's computers.
From the 1980s.
Yes. So, of course, I'd like to thank Pedro Arellano and Dorina for being my guests talking about World Cup. Chances are we'll be talking not 4 years from now, but earlier than that. Dorina can be reached on @Evil Dorina on Twitter.
Indeed.
And Pedro is Pedro Unplugged. So once again, thanks guys for coming on. Say goodnight, Pedro.
Good night, Pedro.
Say goodnight, Dorina.
Good night, Dorina.
And I am Ben Lee, and turn down for what?